Hi guys, in this video, I'll do IB Economics Paper 3 from 2022 May exam. As you all may know, this is the new type of exam Paper 3 that applied the syllabus that started since 2020, which means there are not many available past papers to revise the new exam type, so you better need to pay high attention on the important points to ace the exam. Long rambling short, let's give it a go. All right. Actually, you're supposed to answer only one question from the given two, but for the sake of the thorough revision, I'll do both of them. Here we go. Number one first. Burundi is a landlocked country in Central Africa, and it is mainly operating its economy with the agricultural sector. One information that is important. And a large portion of the population in this country is living in poverty, and many similar information follows, like living below poverty line. Also, infrastructure very poor, no railroads, blah, blah, blah. And on top of that, literacy rate for the core labor force is so low, and internet access is barely possible, etc. Some data is given when it comes to the labor market data. Considering that, question A1. Using the information provided in Table 1, calculate the rate of unemployment for Burundi in 2019. How do we get the answer for the question A1? First of all, we need to find out the number of labor force in this country. And second, we need to find out number of people unemployed. Quite straightforward, I guess. So we can find that the labor force calculated from the sum of employed and unemployed. So 4,908,500 plus 74750 unemployed multiplied with 100. So the answer we get is 1.5%. Following information. Approximately 92% of the labor force are employed in agriculture, which contributes to 40% of Burundi's GDP. It sounds like very unproductive. A2, explain why dependence on primary sector production may be considered a barrier to economic development. Yeah, so since the question asks us to explain why, we need to find out reasons, but the question is taking 4 marks, so I want to say at least 2 reasons are necessary. So first reason I can type is heavy dependence and concentration on low value products such as agricultural products. These kind of things would lead no investment on high value production such as technology and then capital investment, etc. That's the first reason. Second reason, I would like to say 90% of population, no, 90% of labor force in this country is working on agricultural sector, which means they don't really get proper education, higher education, namely, which means there is no investment on education. Therefore, it's going to be a factor that is going to deter the higher labor productivity. These are the 2 reasons I can say why it's going to be a barrier to economic development. There are following informations, especially this time is about trade relationships. So the country is mainly exporting primary products such as gold, coffee, tea, and it is largely relying on importing petroleum and yeah, having high trade deficits. Also, government is also having some deficit in terms of financing the budget. However, one good news is that America is going to be the potential customer of this country when it comes to the mineral trade. I guess that's good news. And this is the market diagram given for gold. Yeah. So previous world price is 1,500, but luckily it is increasing to 1,800. So for the country Burundi, it is a good news because it is able to export more with higher prices, which is going to contribute to higher export revenue. Using information in figure 1, calculate the PED for gold in Burundi. Burundi demand, domestic demand, when price increases from 1,500 to 1,800. So domestic demand. So this is the diagram that we have to look at. So previously, when the price was 1,500, the domestic demand wasn't here. However, as price is getting more expensive, the domestic consumers would be less affordable to buy the product. So it's decreasing from here to here. So it used to be around 25, but now it is going to 20. That's what we can guess. And given the information, we can get the PED of, 20 quantity change, 25 minus 20 divided by 25. And price, Q is this one. P is 1,500 minus 1,800 divided by 1,500. So then we get the answer for minus 20% by the 20%. So it's going to be -1. Yes. Next question, using the information in figure 1, calculate the change in the value of Burundi's gold export resulting from the increase in the price of gold from $1,500 per ounce to $1,800 per ounce. This time is talking about the export. So we need to have a look at the supply side here. It used to be able to produce this much, but now they're more incentivized to produce more to this much level. So the gap between the domestic demand and the domestic supply is going to be the export. So this is going to be the export previous. And this is going to be the exports after the price increase. Yeah, so if that is understood, I can say previously is 70, 25, 100, 1,500 the price, and mind the unit. And after it's going to be 85, 20 multiplied by the new price, so 117 millions. Yeah, so what we have to find is the change actually. So 117 minus 67.5, which means $49.5 million. That's the answer. Following information when it comes to government finance. The budget deficit of Burundi increased in 2019, partly due to an inefficient system for collection of taxes. Tax rates in Burundi are given in table 2. The information that we can get is corporate tax is 30%. Okay. Personal income tax is adopting progressive tax system. However, is 30% to the highest level, which means compared to the other country that is having way higher progressive tax rates, 57.2% in Sweden and Mexico 35%. This country is applying relatively unequal progressive tax system. So even though you are rich, you're not really paying enough amount of tax. And indirect tax, which is regarded as rather regressive, is really, really high, to be honest, 20%, 10%. or 0%. Anywho. The question that we need to answer is defining the term progressive tax. What do you mean by the fact that your country is having progressive tax system? It refers to the tax system where those on higher incomes pay a higher percentage of tax rates. So higher income, higher tax rates. If you can write down them clearly, it's the right answer. Following question 6. A firm in Burundi paid 32,000 Burundi francs, including VAT, in order to purchase a piece of industrial equipment. The rate of VAT for this equipment is 20%. So we're supposed to calculate the amount of VAT which is included in this product price, which was paid on the purchase of this equipment. Yes. So first of all, we need to calculate the actual product price. Oh, it's 1.2 because it is 20% of VAT rate. And after that, if you multiply 0.2, which is the actual VAT rate, then you can get the proper amount of tax. Something's really going on. FBU. Next question. Sketch an ideas diagram to illustrate the possible effect on the Burundian economy in the long run, which is an important information, if the government reduces the rate of corporate income tax from 30 to 26%. So if government conducts a policy targeting long-term development, it is supply side policy. And since it is supply side policy, it affects LRAS. And also it is trying to boost the business sector. So it's going to be a good news to the economy, which allows it to increase its potential GDP. So if I sketch the situation, then it's going to be the price level, real GDP. It used to be having this much amount of GDP. However, thanks to the lower corporation tax rate, businesses are going to increase their investment and capital production or things like that. So it's going to be more productive and making the country richer. That's how it works. New information about gender inequality in Burundi. So Table 3 given illustrates selected indicators of gender inequality in Burundi compared with Mexico and Sweden. Yes, so ratio of female to males with some secondary education. Compared to men, only like 68% of women will be getting secondary education. Compared to Sweden, just the very same with female and male. And science and engineering graduate are also really low compared to other countries, like roughly twice lower than the other rest of the countries. And the percentage of women aged 15 plus who have a bank account, less than 10%, really, really limited access compared to Sweden. Everybody has a bank account. Mexico is not that high, however, way better than Burundi. Maternal mortality ratio, when it comes to giving up birth, the percentage or possibility of dying when it comes to giving a birth, which is a tragic accident, but very common in Burundi, which is really rare in Sweden. Gini coefficient, which shows the economic inequality. Mexico is the highest because it is getting worse when you are getting closer to 1. However, not that good compared to Sweden. Human Development Index, the bigger the number, the better, the lowest out of 3. GNI, oh, tragically low compared to the 2 other countries. With reference to the data in Table 3, explain 2 ways in which gender inequality might act as a barrier to economic development in Burundi. So it has to be about gender discrimination or gender inequality, as we already have analyzed and interpreted the data given. Also, it has to somehow explain 2 ways. So the first way that I can assume is because there is a huge lack of secondary education provided to women, which can hinder them having decent job and stable income that could have determined the better standard of living for the country overall. However, it's not given, so that's why. And one more reason, one more way that we can track down the situation is I thought that maybe the largely limited access to financial credit, like only 6.7% of women having bank account, which means that you don't have any credit, which means you're not able to properly deal with the financial institution, which means it's gonna restrict you to borrow and invest on your education or like starting new business, things like that. These are going to be all limited. So it can be the way that become a barrier to economic development in Burundi. Yes. Wow, the following question is the highlight of this entire question. Number 1. Using the text data provided and your knowledge of economics, recommend a policy which could be introduced by the government of Burundi to reduce income inequality in Burundi. Yes. Okay, I'm going to start my introduction clearly recommending a specific policy. Especially I thought about the policy recommended is the investment in human capital, especially on education. I felt that's really, really urgent. So I'm gonna persuade the government to say, why is the policy highly recommended? I'm gonna write down the content in body 1. And I have plenty of evidence why this policy is the most recommended. First evidence that I found from the content is 90% of labor force working in the primary sector, which means there should be more highly valuable work to increase GMP, which is too low as 660. And so the country's literacy rate is so low, and only 1% of secondary school is having the access of internet. So it requires urgent investment in education. 50% of the entire labor force, however, they only get like way lower percentage of the secondary education compared to Sweden. So it has to be hired so that it can improve some Gini coefficient ratio. Also, lastly, my last reason why my recommended policy is very necessary is because science and engineering field, which can be a driving force of future economic development, must get more investment and allow more population to study the field. Because recently, only 18.2% of females study this field, really, really low level. Compared to Mexico and Sweden, take approximately twice as many as females are studying this field. So that's why I really recommend the policy to invest more on human capital, especially education sector. And next, body 2 content are a bit of evaluation on myself. So what are the concerning barriers to the policy to be successfully implemented given the situation of the government and the country's economy? So what is worrying is the government's budget deficit is so high so that it can be the hindrance to conduct large and long-term investment in human capital. The second reason why it's a bit worrying is that the country's tax system, which has too low progressive tax rate, only 30%, can be the hindrance to the government collecting enough tax revenue for the human capital investment. That's worry. The last worry is that for the moment, and seen from the short term, what makes money for the country, what contributes the high GDP value is the primary sector, such as gold, coffee, tea, etc. Therefore, to the government, it can be a high opportunity cost, somehow transitioning labor force from the agricultural sector to the other industrial sector. So that can be a bit of concern. However, in conclusion, I still want to say that nonetheless, the policy should be highly prioritized since it is one of the best options for the government to fundamentally achieve better equality and further economic development of the country. That's how I am going to compose my 10-mark essay. Yeah, so please note the fact that I brought all these data, most of the data, literally 90% of all the data from the given content, since it is data response essay. So when you are composing your own essay, please mind that fact as well. Yes. Next question, number 2. Traffic congestion is a major problem in India. It is estimated that congestion in 4 major cities costs the Indian economy approximately $20 billion annually, quite a huge amount. According to 2019 survey, India has 4 of the 8 most congested cities in the world. Okay. Therefore, the cities are suffering a lot with the higher fuel cost, toxic gases, and waste, and the time that you have to waste in traffic. In New Delhi, India's capital city, 45% of workers use cars to travel to work, while 89% of workers indicate plans to purchase a car in the next 5 years, which means the situation is going to get worse. However, 80% of car users at the moment say they would like to change their plan if there is potential alternatives, such as Uber. Okay. Question A1. Using a diagram and the information above, explain why traffic congestion in India may be considered an example of market failure. So price, quantity of cars. So it's about congestion resulting from driving too much, which means you are purchasing or consuming too much cars. So I reckon it has to be about consumption issue. So MPC is not problematic. MSC are the same. The problem is on margin of private benefit is too much compared to the ideal level of benefit that we can bear. So the private benefit is here. So it's the quantity of free market, and MSP, this one is the ideal one, Q optimum. But we're not in here. Currently, we're in here. That's what we can say. So currently, we are producing. Oh no! Currently, we're consuming more than we should. This is the gap. Over allocation. That's what we can say. As illustrated from the diagram above, India experiences negative externality of consumption from heavy traffic congestion and the excessive use of vehicles. And it is creating extra social costs, such as toxic gases and time wasted. And one more additional information that I want to write is MSP is not the same with MSP. Therefore, it is in the market failure situation. Next information, taxes on fuel. India is said to have the highest taxes on fuel in the world. At the current market equilibrium, the price of petrol in New Delhi is comprised of the components shown in table 4. Okay, 5017 cost profit. Figure 2 illustrate the market for petrol in the New Delhi. Okay. And then on figure 2, draw the market supply curve without the indirect taxes for petrol in New Delhi. Yeah, okay, without. Then tax amount is 50 rupees. Then we have to find out the price without taxes. Then simple, 70 minus 50, then 20. Yeah, here we go. So this is the, wow, this is the S without tax, you can say. And next question, using figure 2, calculate the revenue collected from the indirect taxes on petrol in New Delhi. Revenue, okay. Indirect taxes revenue. So as we have seen, tax amount is 50, and how much it is sold? Oh, 500. Yes, very simple, 500. So we can get the value as 25, obviously, but it has to mind the unit, which is billion rupees. I want to say, yes. And next question, using figure 2 and your answer to part A2, calculate the loss in consumer surplus with result from the imposition of indirect taxes on petrol in New Delhi. Okay, so this one. This one is without 240, 600, triangle, halving, minus with tax 200, 500, and then 0.5 halving. And then it's gonna be 72,000 from this one and minus 50,000. So it's gonna be 22. Yes. Using figure 2 and your answer to part A2, show that in the absence of indirect taxes, the supply of petrol in New Delhi would be inelastic. Without the existence of tax, I'm just going to pick the random number, quantity like from 60 to 700. Yeah, so 600 to 700, 600 quantity. And then for the price, I'm going to say if it is going to the 700, 20 to 30. Yeah. 20, 30, 20. Then quantity is 600 minus 700 divided by so I get like random number of 0.34, which means it is inelastic. Using figure 2 and information in table 4, calculate the total profit earned by petrol suppliers in New Delhi per day. Calculate the total profits. Per day. Yeah, so we know the profit, pretty easy, profit to suppliers, and we also know the quantity, which is 500. Yeah, so you just multiply these two, then we can get 500. Then it's gonna be million rupees. Okay, following question. The causes and cost of congestion. In the last 10 years, India's road network has increased by 34%, while vehicle registrations have increased by 200%. Additionally, India's strong rate of economic growth has resulted in increased demand for motor vehicles. Okay, therefore, traffic congestion is getting worse and blah, blah, blah. There is a figure that shows the comparison between India and China. And India is having much more drastic increase in traffic, road passenger traffic. Question, define the term rational consumer choice. Rational consumer choice. Interesting question. So rational means you are quite wise and you're just smart consumer, I want to say. So let's define it economically. First we can say rational consumer choice assumes that individual and personal economic decision making is complete with the fully accessible information and considering all the possible alternatives. You're making such a wise decision. In other words, we can say they make rational consumption choice that can maximize their consumption utility. That's the definition of the term. Next question. With reference to the use of cars in India, explain how one limitation of assumptions of rational consumer choice might result in the overuse of cars in New Delhi. Because there is some limitation in the assumption of the rational consumer choice. Simply say, we're not that rational when it comes to making economic decisions. And there are so many limitations that is not explained by free market theory. So that may lead us to make failing decisions. So here we go. Oftentimes, rational consumer choice might lead to the overconsumption of certain products, cars, obviously, in this case. The reason is because drivers in New Delhi cannot have proper and reasonable alternatives, given the fact that the alternatives are not readily available, such as roads or like the other alternative transports, they're not available, right? So the consumers, the car consumers in India or drivers in India just end up making the decision of purchasing car or keep driving car cars for their best utility, so that it is causing market failure. Well, we've come to the very end of this paper. The very same question that we did for the question number 1, 10 marker. Here we go. Using the text and data provided and your knowledge of economics, recommend a policy which could be introduced by the government of India in order to address the problem of traffic congestion in New Delhi. Yes, I'm going to have the very same structure of this essay. First of all, I'm going to start my intro with recommending a specific policy, which is this case, I chose to do policy of investment in transport infrastructure, the other alternative infrastructure, the other types of alternative transport. And in body 1, I'm going to persuade the government why is the policy highly recommended. I have plenty of evidences that I brought from the text and data. A, too high social cost of using private vehicles. Yes, we've read that there is severe congestion in throughout the country. Yeah, and then the country is spending $22 billion every year, and people in the city like suffering from so many related social costs. We have to do something to find the alternative, and then the government has to do something to find the alternative. And then second reasoning that I want to point out is India is said to have the highest taxes on fuel in the world. Obviously, it is already so expensive. And then it is going to worsen the income inequality because it is indirect tax and it's regressive. So the lower income people actually end up paying more, proportionally more tax compared to the rich people. So they need more affordable alternatives when it comes to commuting. Also, I want to say, considering the low speed of road network built in India for the past 10 years and its physical limitation, I mean, the limited spaces where they can spend for the building, and then it is more sustainable and viable to install public transportation rather than the road network, such as trams or trains, things like that. So I believe this one is also supported by the Indian public's opinion, such as that we can find a quote from the data saying many people would switch to alternative forms of transport if they are available. Followingly, I'm going to be objective. Therefore, I want to admit the fact that there are some concerning barriers for the policy to be successfully implemented. The first reason I am worried about this policy can be successfully implemented is because we cannot really prohibit, the Indian government cannot really prohibit or like somehow restrict the consumption. Also, while establishing a public and alternative transportation system, it was technically taking too long time. Yeah. However, like from the survey that we read, 89% of workers indicated that they're going to have some plan to purchase car in 5 years. So maybe the building transportation system can be slower than actual huge purchase of the cars, technically. Though the policy is the most fundamental and sustainable, maybe in the short term, car sharing industry, subsidizing car sharing industry can be a bit more like realistic and a bit quicker way to alleviate the externality, because as I already have pointed out from the previous worry, it is taking long time to build or establish all the transportation system, public transportation system. On the other hand, subsidizing car sharing industry, it can be much quicker to transform the car usage into a bit less polluting way, I guess. However, I'm going to stick to my recommendation. So in conclusion, I will still say this policy, I still highly recommend, and that I really want the Indian government to prioritize this policy, since it is the best option that you can have when it comes to fundamentally improve severe traffic congestion and the following negative externality, and you can ultimately alleviate the related social cost. That's the end. I can finish my 10 marks essay. Yes. Wow. If you have started to revise from the very beginning, question number 1 until this far, thank you so much. That I'm going to bring more videos that I can revise the past papers with you guys. Thank you so much. Bye.